A clock ticks somewhere in the distance while rain falls softly over London. The city looks calm, but every drop seems to echo with secrets. In every empire, there are two histories, the one written in gold and the one written in blood. Britain has always mastered both. For centuries, the crown stood as the world's symbol of dignity and order, marble palaces, royal processions, and promises of justice. Yet beneath that polished surface moved another kingdom, one that fed on power, silence, and fear. Behind every celebration was a scandal carefully hidden. Behind every victory, someone conveniently disappeared. The empire that ruled half the world was also ruled by what it refused to see. In the corridors of Westminster, respectability and corruption dined at the same tables. Politicians shook hands with smugglers. Judges took oaths by day and bribes by night. The difference between the criminal and the gentleman was often just a uniform and a title. And when the line blurred, crime didn't threaten the empire, it served it. Ships that carried silk and sugar also carried opium and stolen gold. The same officers who saluted the queen quietly arranged black market deals under her flag. Power was not just inherited, it was traded, bought, and occasionally murdered for. The crown became both a halo and a disguise. London itself was a mirror of that contradiction. In daylight, the city glittered with civility. After dusk, its alleys pulsed with the heartbeat of an empire built on exploitation. From Whitechapel's cobblestones to Mayfair's chandeliers, every street told two stories. One of elegance, one of survival. The empire's greatest export wasn't just its culture or commerce. It was control. Control of trade, of information, of truth. And the deeper one looked, the clearer it became that the royal image of purity was only possible because darkness kept polishing the gold. That shadow never died. It changed form, following the crown wherever it went, through wars, colonies, corporations, and councils. The faces changed, but the pattern remained. Wealth and secrecy on one side, punishment and poverty on the other. Even today, its echo lingers. Hidden wealth moving through offshore accounts. Scandals buried under official language. Families destroyed to keep names clean. The players wear suits now, not swords. But the game has never really changed. This is the untold story of Britain. The empire of silence built beneath the crown's shine. A place where power and crime were never enemies, only partners bound by ambition. And every secret that glittered once in candlelight still casts its shadow across modern London. Because the truth about the crown isn't just history, it's habit, careful silence, all of it built to hide the truth that power and corruption were never far apart. As the empire expanded, so did its shadows. When British ships crossed the oceans carrying the flag of civilization, they also carried greed. In India, Africa, and the Caribbean, fortunes were made not just through trade, but through theft, exploitation, and blood. Gold, sugar, opium, each brought profit, but each left behind destruction. And back in London, those profits were laundered into estates, titles, and royal donations. The system was flawless. The criminals wore crowns, and the victims built their castles. But what made the machine powerful was its adaptability. When colonies began to crumble, the empire didn't die. It evolved. The new battlefield wasn't territory anymore. It was money, information, and influence. The same aristocrats who once traded human lives began investing in global industries. They learned that in the modern world, control no longer required soldiers, it required silence. You didn't need to spill blood to own a country, you just needed to own its debts. And so, the empire transformed into a network. Behind banks and corporations stood the same elite families whose ancestors once ruled by decree. Their weapons were contracts instead of cannons. Their power came from connections instead of conquests. But while one kind of power became cleaner, another became darker. In the shadows of this transformation, a new generation of criminals was rising. Smarter, quieter, and far more dangerous. They didn't steal for survival. They built empires of their own, mirroring the very system that had once oppressed them. From the alleys of Liverpool to the docks of Bristol, organized crime began to speak the same language as government. Hierarchy, structure, and absolute loyalty. The underworld was no longer chaos. It was business, and in many ways, it was more efficient than the crown itself. By the late 20th century, London had become a global hub not just for finance, but for laundering. A city where dirty money could become clean overnight, and where men with criminal empires were treated like entrepreneurs. Behind polished doors, bankers handled cartel money, corporations bribed officials, and the line between the legitimate and the illegal vanished completely. Even the police who swore to protect the system often served it. Investigations disappeared. Files went missing. Certain names were never mentioned in reports. Because in Britain, justice has always been loyal, but not to the people. It was loyal to the powerful, and that loyalty came with a price. As power climbed higher, morality sank lower. The crown stood untouchable, but its reflection, The ones seen in backrooms, hidden accounts, and luxury prisons told a different story. The men who ruled through fear in the streets were not so different from the men who ruled through politics. Both believed in control, in hierarchy, in never showing weakness. They operated under the same principle: survival through dominance. That is why, when modern Britain talks about organized crime, it is not a story separate from the establishment. It is its mirror. The gangs, the smugglers, the drug barons, they learned from the masters, from centuries of manipulation disguised as law. And now, their stories will be told, because beneath the clean image of the crown lies a kingdom still ruled by the oldest law of all. Those who control fear control everything. Every empire eventually learns one truth: that silence is stronger than violence. Guns make noise. Silence hides power. In the New Britain, power no longer wears a crown. It wears a suit, a Rolex, and a perfect smile. The palaces have become penthouses, the throne rooms have become boardrooms. But the rules haven't changed. Keep your secrets, protect your circle, and if something threatens your empire, erase it quietly. In cities like Manchester, Liverpool, and Bristol, a new kind of kingdom was rising. One built not on flags, but on fear. Its currency wasn't loyalty to the crown, it was loyalty to profit. The faces were ordinary, the accents local, but the ambition was imperial. By the mid-2010s, Britain had become the money laundering capital of the world. Billions moved invisibly through shell companies and offshore accounts, some linked to businessmen, some to politicians, and some to the underground world that law enforcement only whispered about. Behind that curtain of respectability stood men like Warren and Kelroy Allison, two brothers from the quiet towns of Swindon and Trowbridge who had built their own secret empire. To neighbors, they were just successful locals, polite, well-dressed, driving luxury cars that matched their calm confidence. But behind those closed doors was a machine as ruthless as any the crown had ever known. Their business? Cocaine, their structure, military, their strategy, silence. Warren, the elder brother, was the strategist. Calm, precise, invisible. Kelroy was the enforcer, the voice that never shook, the look that made men fall in line. Together, they created an operation that turned ordinary homes into outposts of a global network. They sourced from cartels in the Netherlands, Jamaica, and South America, moving millions in cash and product through Britain's quietest streets. Their communication system was flawless. No phone calls, no messages, only EncroChat, the encrypted ghost network of Europe's criminal elite. Warren's handle was Legal Master, Kelroy's South Kangaroo. Through these digital shadows, they managed deliveries worth hundreds of thousands, coordinated logistics, and kept their empire hidden from every eye that tried to look too close. They laundered their profits through car washes, boutiques, rental properties, even charity fronts. Everything legal on paper, everything lethal in truth. What made them untouchable wasn't just fear, it was structure. Like the monarchy they had grown up under, their power depended on control, secrecy, and silence. They didn't need violence to rule. They just needed discipline. For years, it worked. The empire thrived, invisible yet unstoppable. Police saw the pattern, but not the faces. Everyone spoke of the product, no one spoke of the men, until 2020, when silence finally broke. French authorities had dismantled EncroChat, cracking open what was once believed to be impenetrable. Messages that were meant to stay buried became evidence. Every code word, every transaction, every lie, exposed. And suddenly, the Allison brothers' empire began to fall apart. One courier was caught in Bristol. 4 kilos of cocaine hidden inside a suitcase. A quiet arrest that triggered a storm. Surveillance, raids, and arrests followed like dominoes. One by one, the pillars of the operation collapsed. Warren, Kelroy, their courier Richard Cowell, and their accountant Portia Densley. In February 2025, the courtroom fell silent as the verdict was. Read, guilty, every single one of them. 82. Years of combined prison sentences. The price of building an empire from silence, but behind that conviction lay a haunting truth. For every empire that falls, another one rises. Because the system that created them, the greed, the ambition, the silence, never goes to prison. It simply finds new faces. Every empire is built on faces the world forgets. Men and women who never wanted headlines, only control. Behind every king stands a soldier, a servant, and someone who believes they're untouchable. For the Allison brothers, those faces had names. Richard Cowell, the courier who called himself South Kangaroo. He wasn't loud, he wasn't greedy, and that's what made him perfect. To neighbors, he was just another driver in a hatchback. But inside that car was a custom-built vault, invisible to the eye. A space so carefully designed it could hide kilos of cocaine or bundles of cash without a trace. He didn't fight. He didn't ask. He just drove. For years, Cowell moved silently across England, Highways, quiet suburbs, abandoned roads. Never noticed, never caught. He was the ghost that made the empire breathe. Then there was Portia Densley, the accountant, the loyal lover, and the secret that Warren Allison trusted more than his own brother. On paper, she was just another boutique manager. In reality, she was the financial architect of the operation, the one who made the money disappear and reappear clean. To outsiders, she looked soft-spoken, kind, maybe even naive. But in the underworld, she was known for something else: precision. She managed transactions like a surgeon handles a scalpel. Calm, efficient, emotionless. And her power came not from muscle, but from trust. The brothers' empire was not just built on crime, it was built on discipline. There were no unnecessary murders, no flashy violence. They ruled quietly, like the institutions they'd grown up admiring. The crown had taught them well. Never show your hand, never lose your calm, never let the world see the dirt on your gloves. But power always creates cracks. The same silence that protected them also betrayed them. When the encrypted network collapsed, every secret they had guarded became evidence. Every message, every alias, every coded word. The downfall was cinematic in itself. Police didn't storm with sirens. They waited, watching, recording. They followed the money, the cars, the whispers. And when the trap finally closed, it was almost poetic. The Allison brothers were arrested not with chaos, but with calm. No chase, no fight, just silence. As if the empire they'd built was accepting its own end. In court, Warren still tried to hold the illusion. He claimed he wasn't moving drugs, only fake designer clothes. 4 kilos of trousers, he said, found in a suitcase during a raid. But the jury wasn't fooled. The codes were too clear, the ledgers too detailed. The deception. Every empire leaves behind ghosts. Not the kind that haunt halls, but the kind that haunt history. The Allison brothers are gone. Their network dismantled. Their fortune seized. Yet the question remains, why do new empires always rise from the ashes of the old? Because power never truly dies. It just changes its accent. In Britain, power has always been dressed as order. Polished manners, polite corruption, quiet destruction. From kings to corporations, from palaces to penthouses, the pattern never broke. Control the narrative, erase the noise, and you can rule forever. That's how the crown survived revolutions, scandals, wars, by perfecting silence, and the modern underworld learned from the best. They mirrored the system that raised them. Loyalty without love, wealth without morality, image without truth. Even when they fell like aristocrats, calm, composed, and empty. But beneath that composure lies something darker. Every layer of British power, royal, political, or criminal, is built on the same foundation: fear. The fear of losing control, losing image, losing respect. And as long as that fear exists, the ghosts will remain. Today, the crown still shines. The streets still look clean. But if you listen closely, you can still hear the echoes of empires past. The whispers of deals made behind closed doors, fortunes built on ruin, and families destroyed in silence. The faces change. The uniforms evolve. But the story stays the same. The empire of silence never truly ended. It just learned how to look innocent. And that is why this channel exists. To uncover what lies beneath the crown, to tell the stories that history tried to bury, and to remind the world that power, no matter how royal, always leaves a stain.